Most people don't feel guilty resting because they're weak. They feel guilty resting because somewhere along the way, rest got coded as danger. And if logic hasn't fixed it, if the body still tightens the second it slows down, that isn't a motivation problem. It's a nervous system problem. Wearing a productivity costume. There's a key insight coming later that makes this click fast. A single sentence the brain learned that keeps rest feeling unsafe even when life is stable now. Hold that thought, because once that sentence is visible, the pattern stops feeling mysterious. Guilt after resting is rarely about rest. It's about what rest threatens. When the pace drops, the one reliable source of control disappears. Activity, output, progress, being useful, and the moment that disappears, something old wakes up and asks, if nothing is produced right now, what is the worth right now? Not as philosophy, as threat. That's why rest doesn't behave like rest. Sitting down becomes scrolling, watching becomes checking, relaxing becomes planning. Even the body stays braced, like it's waiting to be caught. A lot of people call that not being able to relax. In psychology, it often looks more like learning, a pairing. Stillness equals vulnerability. Productivity equals safety. That pairing gets installed quietly. It doesn't always come from dramatic trauma. Sometimes it comes from something subtler, conditional attention. Praise arrives when achievement happens. Notice arrives when performance happens. Warmth arrives when helpfulness happens. No one has to say, you only matter when you produce, because the pattern teaches it. Brains do what brains do. They build rules, and then they protect those rules, like they're protecting a life. Here's a fast self-check. Answer yes or no, without negotiating with the question. When rest happens, is there an urge to justify it? Like it needs an acceptable reason, sickness, exhaustion, earning it first. Does relief arrive only after something is checked off, even if it wasn't important? Is rest treated like something allowed only when everything is done, while knowing everything is never done? If any of those are true, the guilt isn't random, it's structured. It's trying to keep a system running, a system that once worked. But that old system has a cost, and the cost is recovery. A quick anonymous vignette, because this pattern is common. A 29-year-old male project lead gets home after a long day. The plan is simple: rest for an hour. The intention is real. 10 minutes in, the eyes aren't on the show, they're on email. Then the body gets up, cleans the kitchen aggressively, opens the laptop just to get ahead. Midnight arrives. Exhaustion arrives. And shame arrives too, like relaxing was failed. That isn't laziness. That isn't weak willpower. That's conditioning. The body has learned one state, high engagement, high alert, solving, optimizing, as the state where competence and safety live. The moment the system downshifts, the brain can interpret that drop as loss of control. Guilt shows up as a corrective signal. Get back to the safe state. This is why some people feel calm only when busy. Not because busy is healthy, because busy is familiar. And familiarity often masquerades as safety. Here's the counterintuitive part. Guilt can act like a safety behavior. When anxiety rises, a safety behavior reduces the discomfort in the moment. Checking, preparing, overworking. And because it brings relief, the brain learns that behavior protected us. Next time anxiety appears, the urge strengthens. For a productivity-wounded nervous system, overworking becomes the safety behavior. Rest removes it. Threat rises, guilt appears, work resumes, relief returns. The loop tightens. That's not character. That's a feedback loop. And there's another layer: identity. For some people, being a good person got fused with being productive. Even if hustle culture is hated, the inner scoring system still gives points for output and subtracts points for rest. In psychology, this is often framed as contingent self-worth, when self-esteem depends on meeting standards. For a high-functioning striver, the standard is achievement and usefulness. So rest doesn't just mean pause. Rest can feel like failing to be who the person is. That's why guilt feels moral. It's not saying rest is inefficient. It's saying rest is irresponsible. Rest is selfish. Rest is dangerous. Rest means falling behind. And when guilt gets moral, calendars don't solve it. Hacks don't solve it. A deeper update is needed. Now add a modern accelerant, constant stimulation, a nervous system under chronic load, notifications, inputs, pressure, can find true rest unfamiliar. Quiet can feel like emptiness. Boredom can feel like discomfort. And the brain starts hunting for something to fix, something to improve, something to produce. So rest becomes consumption, or rest becomes planning, or rest becomes cleaning, activity disguised as recovery. Then the question appears, why does rest not restore? Here's the wound in one line. The productivity wound is the belief that comfort has to be earned, not success, comfort. The belief that existing peacefully requires a receipt. Now the open loop closes. That sentence the brain learned early often sounds like this: if not doing something valuable, something bad will happen. Sometimes the bad is external. Criticism, rejection, being left behind. Sometimes it's internal. Shame, self-disgust, the feeling of wasting life. Either way, the system treats rest as risk. So the goal isn't to force rest harder. The goal is to teach the brain rest is competence, not violation. That happens by changing three things: the meaning of rest, the structure of rest, and the way the return to work is handled. Start with meaning. Many people treat rest as a reward, something earned after being good. That sounds harmless, but it makes deprivation the baseline. And if nothing is ever fully done, rest is never truly allowed. Instead, rest has to become part of the engine. The nervous system runs on demands and resources. When demands stay high and resources stay low, flexibility drops, reactivity rises, creativity disappears first. Patience shrinks, focus gets brittle, sleep quality declines, mood becomes unstable. Rest isn't weakness. Rest is capacity maintenance, meaning helps. But guilt lives in the body, so structure matters. Unstructured rest often triggers guilt. Collapsing into rest with no container makes the brain interpret it as slipping, not choosing. Then the mind starts scanning. Should something be done? Is time being wasted? What is being avoided? How long has it been? That is surveillance, not recovery. A nervous system-friendly rest has a clear start, a clear end, and a clear purpose. Not do nothing until feeling better. More like do 20 minutes of downshifting so the system can recover. Now 3 versions: minimum viable, standard, and upgrade. Minimum viable is for the wired days, when rest feels impossible and guilt feels loud. 2 to 5 minutes. The goal isn't bliss. The goal is one new association. Pausing is safe. Sit somewhere. Do 5 breaths where the exhale is longer than the inhale. Nothing mystical, just longer out breaths. Then pick one sensory anchor for 60 seconds. The pressure of feet on the floor, the warmth of a mug, a sound in the room. The mind may argue, that's fine. Silence isn't required. Safety is. Then end on purpose. Stand up. Mark it mentally. Reset complete. That little ending matters. It teaches the brain. This was chosen, and returning is possible. Standard version is the daily baseline. 10 to 30 minutes. Consistent. Realistic. Give the block a job. Downshift, restore, or play. Downshift means calming arousal. Restore means replenishing energy. Play means enjoyment without outcome. Pick one per block. Mixing them often backfires because the brain turns play into a task and restoration into guilt. Downshift might be a walk without podcasts. Restore might be eating a simple meal without scrolling. Play might be music, a game, drawing. Something with zero productive yield. Here's a pattern interruption. Most people try to rest like they work, trying to do it correctly. That keeps the same performance circuitry online. Recovery doesn't happen through more striving. So practice good enough rest. Slight boredom is allowed. A wandering mind is allowed. The point is training safety, not chasing a perfect feeling. Upgrade version is for high performers, keeping ambition, removing the wound. Upgrade is not more rest time, it's better transitions. The wound flares most in the transition moments, stopping work and starting work. That's where guilt hijacks the system. Build 2 small rituals, shutdown and restart. Shutdown is 5 to 10 minutes. Externalize unfinished business so the brain doesn't hold it in threat mode. Write what got done. Write what's next. Write the first tiny step for tomorrow. Then use a sensory cue. Close the laptop, change clothes, step outside, shift the lighting. The brain needs a boundary. Without it, it stays half at work, half at rest, relaxed in neither. Restart is 2 to 5 minutes. Re-enter with a small win. Open the document. Write 1 sentence, reply to 1 email, outline 1 task. This teaches the nervous system. Starting is safe. Panic isn't required. Because many people unknowingly use stress hormones as ignition. Pressure becomes the only way to begin. Calm starts to feel like incapacity. Then rest feels dangerous because it threatens the only engine that ever worked. The upgrade trains a quieter engine, steadiness. Now address guilt directly, because guilt will still appear. The instinct is to argue with it, prove it wrong. But guilt doesn't need debate. It needs an update. When guilt hits during rest, label it as an old alarm. This is the system trying to protect with an old strategy. That one line removes moral judgment. Guilt becomes a signal, not a verdict. Then add a second line, the update. Responsibility and recovery can exist at the same time, because the brain often holds a false binary, disciplined or lazy, responsible or indulgent, productive or falling apart. The real skill is flexibility. Mobilize when it's time to work, downshift when it's time to recover. Here's another anonymous vignette, because the route can look different. A 34-year-old female nurse finally gets a day off. Rest is the plan, but busy resting takes over. Errands, reorganizing, catching up. It feels responsible, but by afternoon, the body is drained and resentment appears, wasting the only free day. In this case, rest isn't just about productivity, it's about permission. The nervous system has been conditioned to scan for needs, others' needs, the next urgency, the next task. Quiet feels wrong because vigilance became normal. A helpful cue here is simple. No one is waiting right now, not as affirmation, as a safety signal. Repeated gently, the body starts to downshift. Sometimes the productivity wound is a caretaking wound. Sometimes it's a scarcity wound. Sometimes it's a conditional love wound. The surface looks like work ethic. The root is safety. So deadlines can still exist. Ambition can still exist. This isn't anti-achievement. It's anti-self-punishment. Healthy discipline is stable, repeatable. It doesn't require self-hate as fuel. One question reveals the difference when falling behind happens: is there course correction or self-attack? The wound turns setbacks into identity threats. That's why rest feels guilty. It feels like choosing threat. So redefine what counts as rest. Passive rest can be hard at first, so use active recovery as a bridge. Active recovery is anything that lowers arousal without demanding performance. Gentle movement, a slow walk, stretching, cooking something simple, light tidying if it feels soothing, not compulsive. The key is posture, not proving worth, shifting state. As the system learns that downshifting is safe, sitting becomes easier, doing nothing becomes neutral. Also, stop resting in environments that scream work. Beds that equal scrolling, desks that equal grinding, couches that equal stress watching while planning tasks. Environment is nervous system language. Change the cue, different chair, different lighting. Step outside, put the phone in another room for 10 minutes. Small shifts matter because conditioning is sensitive to context. Now the deeper fear underneath guilt, the part rarely said out loud. If rest happens, the edge will be lost. If pushing stops, mediocrity will arrive. If self-criticism disappears, Achievement will disappear. That fear makes sense if pressure has been the engine for years. When pressure is removed, it can feel like removing the engine. But pressure isn't the only engine, it's just the loudest. There's values, curiosity, craft, commitment. Those engines are quieter and sustainable. The real flex is being able to work from steadiness instead of threat. Edge isn't lost when rest happens. Edge is lost when recovery never happens, because then edge becomes irritability, tunnel vision, shallow focus, and impressive-looking productivity that feels empty. Rest is what makes effort sharp again. So here's the shift to carry forward. Rest is not a break from responsibility. Rest is part of how responsible people stay capable. When guilt shows up, treat it like an outdated alarm. Don't obey it. Don't fight it. Update it. Use the 2 to 5 minute reset on wired days. Use the daily block to build consistency. Use the transition rituals so evenings and mornings stop getting hijacked. And remember that old sentence, if not doing something valuable, something bad will happen. Maybe that sentence was true in an earlier chapter, socially, emotionally, financially, at home. If life is stable enough now to practice a new rule, make it this. Pausing doesn't collapse anything. Recovery doesn't cancel ambition. Rest doesn't reduce worth. If anxiety feels overwhelming, professional support can help. One last prompt to make this real. In one sentence, what does guilt say during rest? Write that sentence somewhere. Then write the response that would be given to someone actually cared about. Someone human, someone tired, someone trying. That gap between how the self is treated and how a loved person would be treated is where healing starts. And the moment rest stops needing permission, life gets quieter and stronger at the same time. The old advice was built for a world where you picked one lane, stayed in it, and slowly became the person who does that. But the future doesn't reward single-lane certainty the way it used to. It rewards people who can move across domains without losing credibility. People who can learn fast, translate between groups, and build things that don't fit inside one job title.